Hi everybody, welcome to today's Cathedra webinar. We are coming to you live on February 12th, 2026. If anybody has yet to attend a Cathedra webinar before today, know that our Cathedra webinars get their name from the Greek word for learning. And today you're going to be learning, don't just write the grant, find your red thread and tell a story from your instructor, Diane Leonard, who is president of D.H. Leonard Consulting and Grant Writing Services, LLC. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law printed here. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Moving forward, if you want to return to perhaps view the recording or share this item with a friend, you can find everything under the courses section. The course is called Don't Just Write the Grant, Find Your Red Thread and Tell a Story. Diane did include a resource item for you with today's webinar, the Guide to Incorporating Your Red Thread in Your Grant Application. That is housed within the courses section along with the PDF of the slides, but I have also included links to both of those in the chat for you as well as in the shared notes section. And if you join us for a future webinar, you'll just log in at the time the webinar is happening and you will see that green banner at the top of the screen and you'll click on it to join just like you did today. We typically ask that you join with listen-only capabilities because we are recording, so it just helps to cut down on audio feedback for the recording. And if you find that your sound is coming out of the wrong device, maybe you're trying to use your earbuds, maybe you're trying to use a Bluetooth speaker, whatever the case may be, if you come down to the bottom of your screen where I have a telephone icon, you might have a headphones icon, but either way, that'll bring up a list of your speaker devices and you can select the proper audio output. Even though that we tend to ask that you join on mute, we of course still want to encourage class participation. We want to know your questions, we want to know your comments, certainly any tech support issues that I could help you navigate through, and we are primarily going to rely on the public chat for that. If you don't yet have it open, you can go over to the messages column in gray that's to the left of your screen. If you click on public chat, it will open up a chat happening between all the webinar attendees, me, the NLC staff, as well as your instructor, Diane Leonard. Anything you want to say or ask, you just come down here to where it says send message to public chat, type in what you want to say, and you can either hit enter or click on the little paper airplane, and that will send it in where everyone can see it. We do also have the shared notes section, and I've included a list of helpful links for you there. You can once again find the link to the presentation slides as well as the resource item. You can also find a link to the webinar feedback survey, a link to join our email blasts, a link to go to our YouTube. There's all kinds of good stuff in there. And if you did join with your mic on, no worries at all. You can just come down here to mute yourself with the microphone icon. And if you feel that we missed a question or a comment along the way, you can use that hand raise feature that's to the bottom right of your screen, and that will draw our attention to it. We'd love it if you could get the chat going together now by introducing yourselves and letting us know who's all present on the webinar. You could let us know your name, where you're tuning in from. It's fun to see all the different tribal nations that are represented. Your work or your role in Indian country. It might have led you to today's webinar, or you might just be here for personal information. And then your tribal affiliation, if you have one. You might be a tribal employee and you don't have your own tribal affiliation. That's okay. You are also welcome. And just a quick final note while you are introducing yourselves in the chat, we want to do our best to avoid clicking on the red menu column that's all the way to the left-hand side of your screen. If you don't have it expanded like I do, yours might just be little icons, but just know that if you click on it, it's going to take you to whatever you clicked on the menu. There's not going to be like a warning, are you sure you want to leave the webinar? It will just pull you out right away. So I just want to give you a heads up about that. And then if it does happen, you can always just click on that green banner at the top of the screen once again, and it'll bring you back in. But I just want to let you know because it can be kind of jarring. But while y'all are introducing yourselves in the chat, it is with great pleasure that I introduce your webinar instructor, Diane Leonard. And Diane, I have made you presenter now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brooke. And hello, everyone. So glad to be with you today for a conversation about, well, it's more than writing the grant. We're going to talk about the red thread that can make your grant application more successful than a traditional approach to grant writing, how it can help tell a story, how it can help make us competitive in these ever increasing times of competitiveness. So a tiny bit about me, in case you haven't been in a session with me before. I love all things grants. So all questions are welcome, whether you're brand new to thinking about grants or you've been in a bunch of Native Learning Center grant webinars, you've written a bunch of grants yourself. I'm here for any and all questions that you have because my team and I, our whole purpose as a team is to help take the stress out of grants. And so that's going to mean something different for each of us. It means you'll have different questions. So whatever questions you have for us today, I am excited for them. Now, for me, one of the things that could stress me out as it relates to grants is not moving. It's not about caffeine. I make a lot of jokes about caffeine. I get one, just one. I limit myself 1 cup of caffeinated coffee a day. But I've got to move. And don't you worry, I had some really good arm strengthening workouts this morning, so I'm fueled and ready. But as you're introducing yourself in the public chat, if you want to also let us know what's fueling your day today, I'd love to hear that. I think that's a fun conversation, a little get to know you that's different than some of our traditional grant questions that I might ask. So this conversation about red thread, it's one of my favorites. It's not something, I mean, I've been doing this work for a really long time, like 25 years. I've been in business for 20, so I've been talking about grants for a long time. I didn't know about the red thread concept that whole time, and I wish that I had. Oh, how I wish that I had. So I want to share it with all of you today because to me, this is a way to think about how we craft our applications in a way that helps us stand out in very crowded, competitive settings right now. So I want you to think about how you in your organization, for whatever project it is that you're seeking grant applications or you're seeking grant funding, I should say, for your tribal organizations this year, I want you thinking about what is the red thread of this application? How did I do at engaging my potential reviewers on this red thread concept? Will they understand it? Will they be able to parrot it back? That's my goal for our time together today. If we do that, it means your reviewers, the grant funders who are reading your work, are going to have an easier time advocating for you when they're thinking about who gets funded. So our agenda, we're going to think about what is the red thread theory. We're going to talk about SMART objectives. I know, don't groan. I promise it's going to be fun, but we're going to think about how the structure of SMART objectives, which is rather rigid and sometimes dry, how that can fit in and actually support our red thread concept. And then we're going to think about looking back at the whole application, how we are sure that it's all helping to build on that same concept. At the end, I always ask if there's any outstanding questions, but I have the public chat. Literally, it's right here in the center of my screen. I'm watching it the whole time. I would much rather you ask a question in the moment than hold something in a question parking lot for me later. Oh, and spoiler alert, in case you haven't been in one of my webinars before, it is likely that I'm going to ask you some quick check-in questions along the way in the public chat. It is certainly not required that you participate, but if you're up for it, I do enjoy it. It makes it a little more fun than only being me communicating. I have all these books behind me. Lots and lots of books. Let's see. Yep, here it is right here in the middle. Thought so. My copy of Find Your Red Thread. And well, you can't see how many pages are flipped over. I've got a little bookmark in there, but I've got one of my favorite pages right there where it's thinking about the problem statement criteria. Love it. Constantly I'm referencing it. Now, this is not a pitch. It's not my book. I'm not the author, but I wanted to just highlight for you, where does this concept come from? So Tamsin Webster, amazing professional. I have known her for many years. I've heard her speak at many nonprofit conferences. She actually used to run TEDx in Cambridge. And so when you think about short, really impactful messages, yeah, it would make sense that she would have an opinion about how do you engage people because she was making choices. Who would be given the TEDx stage? So this book, if like the concept excites you and you want to learn more, certainly you can get the hard copy, you can listen to it, but please certainly do support independent bookstores or, I mean, I'll be honest, I know you can get it through the different library apps, so that's a nice low cost way to get it too, but that's where all of today's conversation, that's where it's foundationally drawn from. And here's why. It's not only that I read the book, I learned about it from Tamsin directly before I read the book. Tamsin was on center stage at the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference. And I was standing in the back. I had a fresh cup of decaf coffee and I had my iPad ready. I was taking notes. I was speaking later on in the conference. And so I was listening to what other speakers were talking about. And I stopped typing. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I didn't even finish all my coffee because Tamsin started explaining to this room full of folks who were worried about storytelling and about, in particular, fundraising and storytelling. Most of them don't care about grants, I'll be honest. But so I was listening to Tamsin describe Red Thread and I was captivated because as she described this concept, what she was doing wasn't telling us stories about nonprofit organizations to start. She wasn't telling us stories about the fundraising impact it had. She was explaining why do we as humans, why do we react to certain kinds of stories? What is a formula for success? Whether we're thinking about selling someone something, I'll tell you, there's a really cool story about why people consider diamonds to be a symbol of like an engagement ring or a wedding ring. Where did that come from in the 1900s? Like, how was that pitched? So there's stories that have nothing to do with our fundraising or grant writing work. But what she was doing was giving a wide range of examples that are about how we as humans, how we react to and take action based on stories. And she said what they have in common, the ones that actually compel us to take action, is that they have a red thread. Now, what, you might say, is that red thread? All right, before I explain it to you, have any of you read the book or heard this concept before? Could you let me know in the public chat why for yes and for no? I know that when I start to talk books in different settings and classes, folks will be like, yeah, read that one. I'm like, oh, cool. So I just like to find out if folks have before. Also, clearly, these are all real books behind me. If you're looking for other grant writing or nonprofit book-related recommendations, just let me know. I've got a whole shelf on my Goodreads that has all sorts of stuff that I highly recommend. All right, so a new book concept for many of you. Great. Again, it's not a pitch about the book. It's about what's the foundation for the idea. I'm going to give you some resources that are going to help you apply this to grants. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube that's free, Her Message Design Institute. I'll share that information with you in a bit. There's a lot of free online resources if you want to dig even deeper outside of the grant application. So the red thread concept, what we have in front of us here is in any setting, not just grants, what is the red thread framework? There's 5 components. Remember what Tamsin was telling us when I literally stopped doing anything except for listening intently to what was happening on the stage. When Tamsin was presenting this, she said, it doesn't matter what setting we're in when we're trying to get a person to take action. This is the formula that will compel them to take action. What is the action we want our grant makers to take? We already know the final action step that we want people to take. Does anybody want to type it into the public chat for me? What is the action that we want any of the grant makers we submit materials to? What is the action that we want them to take? Let me know what you think. You know what? I can hear some of you are like, you're thinking, Diane, I want them to read it. Yes, actually we do. In this day and age of such high application volume, we want them to read it. But what do we really want? We want them to fund us. We want them to say, hey, did everybody else read this one? You know, the one that was about, we should fund them. I think this is a really great proposal. I think they're going to do great things. Or, hey, did anybody else see this one? it scored 97 out of 100. I'm super excited about the work. Like, this is at the top of what we're going to fund, right? That's the action that we want them to take. Great. So we know the end. But now we've got to back it up. So what is the framework? The first part is that we need to have a goal that we're working towards. We need to introduce the problem to our reader. Sometimes they might not even know that they had this problem or that this problem existed in the community, big picture, or in your community specifically. So sometimes we're teaching somebody something really fast. We need to find out what is a shared understanding, a shared truth that is going to compel action, that's going to compel people to make a choice, to say, yes, I want to support that. And we're going to have to help folks think about change in their thoughts and their behaviors, so that ultimately, again, grant makers, the final action we want them to take is to advocate for us to get funding. But that red thread framework, even outside of grants, there is going to be an action, something that's going to help ensure that that desired change is going to be a concrete thing for whatever you're trying to get someone engaged in. So this is the framework that we'll come back to. So the red thread. I'll be frank, I'm not good at knitting. I'm not good at crocheting. I tried those the woobles. Yeah, I was gonna say wobble. I'm like, that's not right. The woobles. I tried those little woobles crochet kits. I have a half-finished little green T-Rex. It might look like a T-Rex if I ever get a chance to finish it. So I think it's funny that when I hear red thread, the first thing that comes to mind is a needle and like a red thread of yarn. Not my skill set, but it's an image that I can see how, if instead now I picture like my written work and how there's more like a path that someone's going to follow, almost like Harold and the Purple Crayon, that children's book where there's the purple line that Harold follows. I can see, even though it's digital written work most of the time, I can see, oh, this is the red thread of what I'm trying to have folks follow. This is the journey that I want them to follow. This is ultimately what I want them to understand about our very complex work, whatever our complex work might be in that particular application. So the red thread, in high level, big picture, before we're talking only about grants, it's a more metaphor. It's what we're thinking about related to storytelling, how we have something that is clear, that's unifying, that takes everything in a written body of work and pulls it all together. Now we'll be grant specific because that's why you're here. So in grants, the red thread, it's what's going to help make it all cohesive. It's going to be your through line. It's going to be everything from that opening executive summary paragraph on an application form, through your needs statement, through your outcomes. Yeah, it's definitely touching on your objectives, probably your evaluation section, organizational capacity. Don't forget about it. It touches and is related to everything. Every piece of your application is the opportunity to be consistent, to be additive, to create clear alignment around what your red thread is. And what we're considering is what makes it meaningful. How do we know it was done? So I'm going to give you some reasons why it matters to you as the author, the writer of the application. And then I'm going to give you some different reasons for why it would matter to the funder or to the reviewer. So let's think about the writer first. Yeah, I decided we can be selfish. We can think about ourselves, the folks who are writing and submitting the grant applications. We can think about ourselves first. So the red thread, how does it help us? Grants can be stressful. I told you we want to take the stress out of grants. And so what could we do? How could the red thread help? Well, there's the mission of your projects and your programs, of your organization. And there's also the mission, the goal, the purpose of the funders. The red thread can be a nice way that we're showing connection between high-level missions, yours and or funders, and a specific project or program. Here's how this one specific thing we're asking for, this sewer project, this playground equipment, this after-school tutoring program, whatever it is that is a specific thing you're asking for support for, here's how this thing connects to the bigger picture for us. The red thread can help with that. The red thread can help keep us focused. Different grant makers, different structures, different questions, character limits, word counts. And so as you're considering, geez, how am I going to answer this? How will I answer this question versus that one, which feels redundant? Has anybody ever felt that way, that grant makers are asking questions that feel redundant for something you may have answered earlier? I'm going to put a quick delineator here in the chat box. Let me put 2 little asterisks. Y for yes, N for no. How many of you have ever completed a grant application where you felt like, with all due respect to the grant maker, some of the questions were redundant? I have both my hands up. Remember, I was a grant maker when I started my career, so it's with lots of respect to grant makers. Oh, and think I'm not alone. Some of you have also felt like you were answering redundant questions. Now, the grant maker probably didn't think that they were redundant. So here's how the red thread helps you. As you think about, how do I want to answer this question? Now you're not thinking about just that question or just the one that feels redundant. Rather, you're asking yourself, okay, I have 2 opportunities here, and how can I answer them in a way that adds to my overall red thread? Now it doesn't feel quite as redundant. We're trying to make them slightly nuanced as we build on that red thread concept. It's in reinforcing who we are, what sort of impact we're trying to create in the community. What is the change we're trying to create? And the most important one probably on this slide is that it makes your grant memorable. We want our funders to remember who we are, what it is we want to do. And fundable. Yes, you're right. I should have capitalized that word. I should have underlined that word, bolded it. It makes it fundable. I'm not saying it's absolutely going to get the award. We can't control all the things. Red threads make it more fundable, more competitive. Because, why? Because, well, there's a benefit to the funder. Let me explain. So the red thread, it helps a funder who has a stack of proposals. I mean, like a stack. Whether it's digital or physical, they have more proposals than they have dollars available. I'm wondering if anyone has seen, whether it was on LinkedIn, and I saw people talking about it, they read award notices, they read rejection notices. Did anyone happen in the last 6 months to catch the details from funders where they're saying that their application volumes are at unprecedented, love that word, at unprecedented levels, higher volumes than they have ever seen before? Go ahead, let me know in the chat. Has anyone seen that yourself in an award or rejection notice or an article in Chronicle of Philanthropy or something on LinkedIn? I put a delineator. Let me know. If you haven't seen it, well, now your feeds will be full of it because I have set it in the online setting, and so you're welcome. I'm sure it'll show up for you somewhere here soon. It's true, and it's because we had changes in federal grant-seeking priorities and some processes that always creates some changes in volume, and we had more people than ever using AI as it related to getting grant applications completed and submitted, and so foundations saw a huge increase in applications. So they need to understand really quickly, we like this one, we don't like this one. We want to read this one, we don't want to read that one. So they come up with their own ways to quickly sort. You're going to do all the best practice things that we talk about in other Native Learning Center grant webinars around our research and our due diligence and our relationship building so that we're doing those things before we apply. I believe that all of you will do that. I know you will. If we do those things, They're going to pick us to read because we didn't ask for too much, because we applied to the funders that fund in our community, in our geography. We didn't apply for someone like that's in the wrong state for where we want to do our work. So we're going to get ourselves into that smaller pile that they will read. Now there's even more pressure now because it's a stack, still more than they have dollars available. And so they're trying to quickly understand, who am I most excited about? Red thread makes it so that the impact that you are intending to create, the success that you anticipate, is clearer to the reviewer. Not only can they follow the logical progression of how you have designed your idea based on your community need, they're going to be able to, at the end, whether it was a teeny tiny application or something much larger, it doesn't matter. At the end, they will be able to say something like, oh, this was the one that did, oh, this is going to be great. This organization does this thing. Love it. They're going to have like a phrase that they will remember when someone says, did you read this one? They're going to have a quick way that they describe it. It's going to be not verbatim anything that you write in your actual proposal, but they're going to have your red thread, which you so consistently built across the entire application. They're going to have that in their memory bank when another reviewer, another one of the grant makers on the panel, when someone else asks about the proposal. Oh yeah, this is the one that delivers hot meals to seniors and also then is doing home health care checks at the same time. I just made that one up. I don't know why, but today that was what the story was. Whatever it is, and I've been a reviewer, I am every year, multiple times, and there's always one or two out of the stack that I read in a cycle where I will remember days, weeks, months later, something about it. Like, oh yeah, that was a good one. I want to find out more about that. It's not that their budget was better than the other one. It's not that they did a better job of citing their needs in the need statement. Those are all done well. If they make it that far, they're done well. But it was about how memorable the story was. It connected to me. And I don't mean just a single impact story about a person in a community. I mean the way that the red thread was woven throughout. So in your application, again, whether super tiny or a much larger application, we have on the left-hand side the 5 red thread elements that Tamsin tells us is present in every red thread approach to storytelling. Goal, problem, truth, change, and action. Those are our 5. On the right-hand side, I have which section of the grant application is connected to Tamsin's framework. So what do we have? Goal to goal. I know you're like, that was an easy one, right? Yes. When you think about your red thread goal, we have our red thread goal in our grant application is your goal statement. The goal of the proposed program is, you're writing that all the time. It's your big, ambiguous statement. It's not all the details. It's not going to have all your outputs and all of your measurements. No, it's your single sentence about the big, ambitious aim that you have for your project or program. In fact, we're going to be playing with this. We're going to do a little workshopping. If you want to, if you didn't already, like grab a pad of sticky notes, get a notebook, open up a document. If you've been in my webinars, you know how often I say things like this. I'm like, start writing down your ideas. Make this yours. You can start to jot some notes down and you're already going to have a really good head start. So, okay, goal to goal. We have our red thread on the left-hand side, goal in the application. Check the box. You've got that one. You're good to go. Framework item number 2, the problem. Okay, so I get it, like slightly different language. Actually, some grant makers use the word problem in their headings or in their questions. So that helps us to tune in a little bit. But your need statement section, where you're using data to prove your expertise about your community, about the need, about the barrier, your need statement is where in the grant application you're making the case for the problem. Cool. All right. This already structurally feels like it's pretty well aligned. I'm biased though, so let's keep going. Let's see what else we can find. Okay, truth. What is the truth that you want people to agree to? Theory of change. Okay, somebody just threw something at the screen. They're like, wait, Diane, we're not writing theory of change today, are we? We've done those in other webinars before, but look at how that just played out. We're coming full circle. The theory of change that you may have written with me in some of these other Native Learning Center webinars, it's your truth. I love it when a plan comes together. So your theory of change, in case you haven't been in one of those webinars, here's the quick overview. If we do this, we expect that this will happen. Or you could say, do this, get that. So if we do this thing, or if we offer this service, here's what will happen. Here's the benefit. Here's the impact. That is your belief, your practiced wisdom. It is your expertise as a tribal organization in your community. You're like, we feel really confident. Do this, get that. That's the truth of your red thread. It gets expanded because you're giving more of the details when it comes to the program description section, which is often the largest part of your grant application. Cool, happy about it. But the theory of change by itself is your nugget. That is the bit that goes into your red thread for your truth. Okay, so change. Outcomes, you're right. The outcomes that you expect to have happen as a result of your program or your project, your services, the changes in knowledge, behavior, skill. Yes, you're right. I used the word changes on the grant side, and the word change was on the left-hand side of the arrow for our red thread framework. Perfect. Okay. And so what's last? Now, I told you that the action as a result of red thread for grants, that ultimate action we want them to take because of our red thread storytelling is to fund the proposal. Give me an award email, please. Say yes to our request. Give us all the dollars. But we can actually be more specific in our proposal if we want to think about that 5 framework outline for red thread. The strategies and the key activities that we will take in order to achieve change, in order to make our truth, our theory of change happen, those are important too. Those are additive because if we say, here's what we're going to do, and the grant maker reads, here are the strategies you're going to implement, here are the nuanced key activities, here's your timeline. If they understand that, they believe more in your credibility, they believe more in your expertise, they are more likely to want to take the action of, yep, you're right, funding the grant. So this slide, this gives you your quick guide, your quick reference to how do we go from red thread, the way Tamsin describes it high level for any storytelling, to our grant speak, our day-to-day grant applications. To help you think about your applications, the ones that you're building, especially if you're in some of the bigger government applications, you might say, because I know this, I've been asked this question many times, not just in online trainings, but I talked about red thread at some conferences this fall, big audiences, and what was one thing that people ask all the time? So this is just for foundation grants, right? Super well-intentioned question. I appreciate that they were comfortable enough to ask. I'm guessing that some of you might be thinking the same question, so I'm like, let's just put it out there. My polite answer back was, and still is, I can see how, because storytelling is used, how it might feel more appropriate for foundations as a concept. However, in our team's experience of using red thread, equally applicable, it's any grant application, it doesn't matter what the source of the money is, because it's still how you are engaging with the people who are making choices about the awards that they will make. So whether they're sitting around and trying to get to consensus on who gets money, or they're sitting at their computer scoring your proposal so that the government agency or department can score in order, the red thread is equally important in all those settings. Now, in the government applications, you might actually have more formal things that are building your red thread. You might have things like logic model attachments. You might have more things like a work plan attachment. You might have more questions, sub-questions in the big 40-page narrative that are talking about your theory of change. And because of that, I wanted to make sure that you understood how those design documents, those design elements, are some of your red thread clues. So before you even worry about writing a 200 character counted response, a 200 word counted response, whatever it might be, if you have any of these design documents that you're working from as you build an application, you have red thread framework elements. Now you want to focus on how you keep it consistent across your entire application. I love, you know this about me, many of you do. I love having theory of change agreed upon. I love having logic model documents, even if they're like drafty, they're not finalized, they're not PDF'd and ready. Oh, give me a work plan with a rough timeline. These are things that I love to have in order to write a grant application from. Makes it easier and faster to answer questions. But when you layer on that now they help me build a red thread focused story for my entire application, I am sold. I love it. Now I'm going to show you some examples because you're like, Diane, it sounds nice, but how do I actually build it in a narrative? Okay, it would be a whole lot of reading for all of us if I brought you a whole proposal today. Brooke would wonder why we were all being so quiet in the webinar. And it would be because I'd have to be giving you all reading time. What I have done instead, I have two different writing examples. They're excerpts. They're teeny tiny. You have the slides. They're in your handouts, so you can come back to this and read it in more detail later. But here's what I want to highlight. We've got a sample body of text. And so our team wrote it and then said, all right, we want to find our elements. Now, what I'm about to show you is in alignment with our particular team's AI use policy. If you don't have an AI use policy, tiny little sidebar for a moment, I do encourage you to have one as it relates to grant seeking. More and more grant makers are asking if you used AI to develop your proposal or not passing judgment on what your choice might be and where you find it allowable. Having an AI use policy to use as backup for your answer is what I'm defining as the important standard to consider. We did not use AI to write this excerpt. What we did was we said, please find, here's the red thread framework, please find the 5 elements in the narrative excerpt that we have given you, and please color code them for us. That was how we used AI. Could we have manually done it? Yes, but we were also having a lot of fun playing with it. I'm going to show you how also we manually edit using this concept in a minute, but I liked the color coding idea, and it seemed like, well, I was going to use the tool for something to make it a little faster and easier for us to find. So we find 5 different colors. What do they mean? Thanks so much for asking. Right, here's the color code. I didn't tell the AI tool, which was a locked LLM at the moment when we were using it, so it wasn't teaching anything and there was no sensitive individual identifying information. It was all fake for what we wrote. But these 5 colors that you saw on the screen just a moment ago, we had our goal present, we had the problems present, the truth was present, the change, and the action. So I'll flip back to the very beginning again. 2 paragraphs, very traditional looking. It was a bit like being on a scavenger hunt. We wanted to find all the items. You could, although if you're the writer, it's really hard to find the things because you're so close to it, you think you see it. But you could have asked a colleague to grab 5 different highlighters or 5 different colored pens, or to put a star at the beginning and like write what they think they see. You could ask someone to read it and find these 5 elements. It was super fascinating to see that AI could find it and help even turn them into colors for us. But what that did was it confirmed for our team, yes, we did it. Our 5 elements, goal through action, are present. So then we tried it again. I mean, we were feeling pretty confident in ourselves as writers who would use the red thread concept. Let's try something else. So we wrote another small little excerpt, still not based on any real projects that we were working on, but for the sake of testing the red thread idea, and also knowing that a lot of folks will say to us, I don't have extra editors. I don't have extra people on my team who can be fresh eyes. So we were at the same time testing not only red thread writing, we were also kind of playing around with what might AI be able to help with. And we asked exactly the same thing. And we still got 5 colors. We're like, yes, batting average, perfect. Okay, so we gave you the 2 clean examples that quickly came out with the 5 colors. Let's be transparent. It takes us iterating to get to the place where we're happy with red thread. That was not like a 5-minute exercise. That took a lot of work from a team that's been practicing with the red thread in order to come up with an excerpt that we thought you would be able to read later on in the handout or on a screen, and to test it to say, does it have the elements? There's no real great way to show you the result of having a huge, big application to say, okay, where do we find all the elements, right? Like, again, it'd be super quiet and it'd be a long, awkward time on the webinar if we read an entire application. I'm going to show you in a minute, though, how our team edits, how our copy editor on our team uses this, regardless of the size of the proposal. But I want to highlight the download, your handout for today. In addition to the slides, our team has a guide to incorporating your red thread in your grant application. So this can help be you're writing your application, you've got the guide next to you, or you've got it up on your screen. Thank you. Brooke has put the link in the public chat for us right now. This is the image on the left-hand side is what the cover of that PDF looks like. We hope that this can help make the red thread idea actionable for you as a writer and for the rest of your team. So let's play with it, shall we? It is going to get a little quiet here because I'm going to give you some work time. I gave you a few hints. I said you might want to make some notes on a sticky note or on a notebook or on a piece of paper. But I would really like for you to test building some of your red thread. We're not going to spend lots of time on each one. I want to give you a moment or 2 or 2.5. I want to give you a little bit of time to make some notes about each of the 5 elements. So let's start with goal. I would like for you to make notes, again, in whatever structure or place is happy for you today. What feels easiest is right at hand. I would like for you to make some notes about what you want your program or project to achieve. High level, probably ambiguous, not a lot of detail. If you say, is it okay if I open up an application I was just working on or that I submitted last week? Yes, absolutely. Please do that. If you are willing to type your goal, it doesn't need, please, no judgment on grammar, not even on spelling or acronyms, none of it. But like some quick notes about what's going on for you and your goal in the public chat. I would love to see what you're jotting down. I'm going to give you, for this one, I'm going to say 70 seconds. I know, awkward amount of time. A little more than a minute. Not a lot of time, just some quick notes about your goal. Here, let me set my timer and go. 70 seconds, please, to jot some notes. Hopefully, a few of you will share your notes in the public chat. Let's see what you get. Also, if you have any questions at all, I'm in the public chat, I'm watching, but I'm making this super low tech so you can do it in the way that is easiest, fastest, feels most accessible for you today. Whenever you're ready, you still have 43 seconds left. Whenever you're ready, anybody can start typing their broad program or project goal into the public chat. Those are welcome at any time. All right, just a few seconds left, like 5. And so this is the perfect time if you are willing to share any of your notes about your program or project goal. I would love to see them in the public chat. What are some of the things that you were writing down? Your high level, big, broad program or project goal. If it's faster, just broadly type in like, what is the project? It's about housing, it's about nutrition. What if you want to just even tell us that much, it gives us a little bit of context for the variety of the programs, projects, and services that you're thinking about related to your red thread. So also an option if that's what you want to share for us. I'm always fascinated by the wide range of things that folks come to Native Learning Center webinars looking to find grant funding for. That part to me is always, it's such a joy to see the wide range of ways that you're putting your grant writing skills to use for your communities. I love it. All right, so Jackie was working on a goal and some notes around drug treatment court. Great. That was not one of the examples I gave. See, I'm so glad you let me know because now I know that that is something that's being supported by your grant writing skills. Love it, love it. Thank you. Angelina, housing. Awesome. Yep, I remember that from past webinars when you've been here. Great, glad you're here. What else do we have for some of your goal focus areas? What are some of the things you're working on? We'll see if we can get a few more folks to share with us, and then we'll move on to the second framework element. Great. Oh, prevention. Okay. Yep, we've got a super wide range of programs and projects this today. Empowering others. All right. Tribal research capacity building. Yeah, super wide range. Okay. Not directly in housing for Joseph. Domestic violence. Excellent. Okay. So hopefully that particular first step, you might have opened a document for something you wrote recently, or you jotted down a few new ideas. Let's think about the second element of our framework. If we have our goal, and we're walking through it today in order, the 5 from top to bottom, just saying out loud that if you popcorn between them in the future when you're brainstorming, there's no rule against that. Sometimes it's actually what helps you to think about the different elements is to go out of order. There's zero pressure nor rule that says you have to go in the order. It's just the way we're going to walk through it today. All right, so framework item 2, I want you to brainstorm around the problem. And again, you might say, oh, can I use the application from yesterday? Can I use the one from last month? Yes, you please do. So jot down a few notes. What are the first things that come to mind related to the challenge, the need, a barrier? What is it that needs to be addressed? And I'm going to put a delineator in the chat box so that we're getting a new set of responses. We can see, probably can tell the difference anyway. But so now if you're sharing anything in the chat, let's see what sort of challenges, needs, what's being addressed by the work that you're going to propose. I'm going to give you 65 seconds this time. on your mark, get set, go. It's not really a race, but like, there you go, 65 seconds to make some notes. Think about what is the problem that you would want someone to understand as a result of the way you approach your storytelling. What is the challenge, the need, the barriers, the problems? Go ahead and let me know in the public chat once you've got that part done. I'll keep an eye on your timer so that we don't go over time. And I know people like, this is what your team actually does. I get asked that when I'm in person with folks too. Yeah. If it's not something that we've done before, if it's a program or an organization we're working with for the first time, yeah, we sit down and brainstorm like, well, exactly what you're doing. So it's what our team does too. We wouldn't teach you anything but the things that we do day to day. All right, 1 second left, 1.5 seconds. Okay, I know you're like, you can't really get much done in 65 seconds. No, but it gets the wheels rolling at the very beginning so that we can think about how this framework will come together. If you're willing to share a note or two, a word, a phrase in the public chat around what the challenge or the need is that has to be addressed, I'd love to see that. Hopefully what we're going to see is we're going to be able to string together, you're welcome, a little bit of a pun intended there. We're going to be able to string together your responses in the chat box to think about what your red thread story would be like. So I'll give you a moment to type into that public chat. If you didn't type in the first time, can you type in now? Yes, please, you always can. Always open, always welcome. What are the challenges or the needs, the problems, the barriers? What is it that you are reacting to? Why is it you are proposing what you are? All right, so I already see we've got connection between what Lola said. So if the goal is related to domestic violence, I'm guessing domestic violence support, maybe for victims or minimizing incidences of domestic violence. I'm spinning ideas here on my own, but then, okay, so what would be a challenge or a need to be addressed? Collaboration with local law enforcement offices. Great. Okay, so I'm not sure where the thread's going, but we've got 2 components that I can see already there for Lola. Thank you. That's awesome. So your third set of notes, your third piece of the framework is going to be around your truth. What is it that you want the grant maker to agree with? What is it you want them to say? Oh yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Yeah, seems like a good idea. For those of you that have written your theory of change before, this would be an ideal place for you to utilize it. That structure, again, being if we do this, so fill in a blank, we will get that. If we do this, our result will be that. Something along those lines would be your theory of change. Let's see. We've done 70 seconds. We've done 65 seconds. Let's do 67. We'll go right in the middle on that one. So 67 seconds for some brief note-taking, please, around the truth or the theory of change. What is your belief as a team, as an organization? What is it that you know based on what you've done before and how awesome you are? If we do this, we're going to get that. Go ahead. Starting now. 67 seconds. Got about 16 seconds left. I am going to put another delineator in. Actually, this time I'm going to put a delineator in the word truth, so it's easier for even me to see what section are we in. There we go. So now, as you're wrapping up, you've got just another second or two left as you think about what is the belief, the insight, if you want to write about your theory of change. If we do this, we get that. What is going to happen? What do you feel confident about as an organization? If you want to type that into the public chat, I'd love to hear. Now, Joseph, I see your comment here that grant makers want numbers, and that's true. There are grant makers who are driven by output. How many people or how many houses or how many animals, outputs do drive some grant maker choices. But we need to tell a story. Sometimes there's programs that are low numbers because they're high touch, it's high support. And that's what's appropriate in terms of program design. So it's part of the story that we have to tell our grant makers. We have to help them understand not just the community in which they're serving, but the type of program they're serving. So I agree with you that sometimes that's tricky. Grant makers might make choices. I am not part of a tribal community. And so I live, though, in a very rural community where numbers are also low, but for very different reasons, because it's a very rural community. And so we face some of those same challenges. And it's more about then finding the right grant makers that have a passion for the type of work being done. So it's not grant makers who are only worried about outputs. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes for grant makers, that is it. And that's just not the right grant maker that's a fit for you, is what we have found to be some good advice. All right, so some truth. It's coming in the public chat. How cool is that? To be like, I typed truth and here's what came back. No, it's what you're typing back to me. I love that. So let's take a minute. Go ahead, type in there for me. What is the truth? What is your theory of change? Or if we do this, we get that. So let's see. Whitney said, if we educate on car seat safety, we will see fewer children's deaths. And now what's funny, because I asked for like high level goal words, and so I have a totally different understanding of Whitney's goal word, which I'm pretty sure was prevention. Yep, okay, just looked back. So we saw Whitney's goal word was prevention, car seat safety then as it related to problem, and now let me see truth. If we educate on car seat safety, we will see less children's deaths. We will see fewer accidents and things that result in children dying. No one's going to argue with that truth. You're like, no, yeah, mic drop. That actually, Whitney, like everybody, we did not plan that. I really didn't know how this was going to play out, what we would see for whose statement that would be built. I have to reach for my yellow dingy bell because that was a beautiful truth that you put into that chat box. It's not in the right word count. It's not maybe character counted, wordsmith the way you would have it finally in your application. Fine. Okay. You had 67 seconds. No one's going to disagree with what Whitney said. No grant maker is going to have an issue with that. That is a rock solid element for your red thread framework. Okay. Now folks are like, well, I'm not sure if I want to type mine in after. Okay, but we've got a good standard. No, I'm serious. So please, if you have any other comments, notes, things that you want to share with the truth, the way that you were thinking about it for your project, for your program, and we're thinking, in this case, it's additive, but you saw how already what I learned about a framework idea in one section, I went back and I was like, oh, now I get it. You, as you really develop this, can bop between the different sections of the 5 red thread sections. All right. Oh, I get so many messages. I got to click a more messages button. That was really fun in the public chat. Thank you, everybody. So if we can educate law enforcement officers who deal with domestic violence situations, you're educating more about domestic violence, maybe they'll encourage the victim to contact the domestic violence office so you can provide help and resources. I'm reaching for the yellow dingy bell. There it is again. I shouldn't have put it that far away. No one's going to disagree. Not a single grant maker is going to disagree with what Lola has shared with us today. Lola, thank you for taking the time. I know it was a lot to type in the public chat. Thank you. Okay, and Angelina has shared that homelessness is unfortunately very prevalent in our community, and with more rental assistance, we can help prevent our members from being evicted and becoming homeless. We're 3 for 3 on truths that were shared in there, folks. Dingy bell. Might say, well, but that's just factual about what we do. Yes, it is. But it's important that it is in your proposal, that it's available to the grant maker to understand that you're building so that the grant maker, now they might say something like, after the review, after they've read 25 proposals, it's been a few days, they're coming back to the review meeting and they're like, okay, wait, what? Oh, this was the one that was focused on car seat safety in their community. Winning. If that's what they remember, you are in a great spot. They remember your proposal. Do they know all the details and the nuances? Okay that they don't. They remembered part of your truth because they were engaged in your story. Oh, I'm so excited by it. Okay, I kind of got chills in that one. So let's go to the next section. Your change. So you might have a recent grant proposal open where you're looking at your outcomes. Totally fair. If that's not what you have open, jot some notes about what thinking, what behavior, what skills, what do you want to have change as a result of your work? There's a wide range of options for what you might be jotting down. This time we will say 63 seconds. It's kind of like I'm playing, like I just scroll on my timer. I'm like, let's see what we get. 63 seconds for some notes around change. And then you guessed it. We're going to rejoin our group in the public chat and we're going to see how this is building for everybody. So ready? 63 seconds to make some notes about change. All right, you're a little past halfway. Just a few seconds left. And then here we go. I'm going to put in our delineator with the heading change. What is it that you're trying to change? Behavior, knowledge, and thinking, and approach. And Joseph, I see what you've been adding to the chat as well. Feels more like I feel like we should give you a blog spot to talk about some of this to try and change what funders perceive, whether we're talking government funders, foundation funders. I think what you're sharing is incredibly important and probably isn't what you're asking for in a grant application, but rather to your bigger point, what you're trying to create for change in the sector. And I applaud that and happy to help however I can offline from here too. All right, Whitney is building upon the thread for us, folks. Appreciate that. Let's see. So Whitney's change. Keeping children in the back seat longer, seeing children rear facing longer, and using top tethers in car seat installs when appropriate. That is a whole list of change. And I will say, sidebar, it's rare that I do drop funny little nuggets in our webinars, don't I? But Whitney, your thread today, really, it's like, it's hitting me really right on. My oldest daughter turns 20 today, which is a whole extra thing that we won't get. I'm like, 20? Really? But she stayed rear facing until what was appropriate at the time. And then, like, my youngest sibling had their children. And I was like, aren't you going to turn her around? No. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that the standards had changed from when I had my first baby to when they had their first baby. And then I think back to, parents are like, we didn't have a car seat when we brought you home. right? But the rules of safety have changed dramatically. And so what you are sharing, Whitney, is incredibly important. And it's change that not everyone who's a grant maker would understand because of their own personal experience and exposure. They might not have had children. They might have had children a long time ago and not understand how much the safety recommendations have changed. Might not get it. So that change is incredibly important because no one argued about your truth, regardless of their age or regardless of if they had children or not. They were an auntie. They never challenged your truth. But the change part, they went, oh, didn't know. And there's a sidebar, you got the story about it being my daughter's 20th birthday, right? Some of the fun stuff. So the additive part of the red thread. I'm so excited by what you all are building here. And I totally am fine. Like I said, it's always optional in the chat. So I know that folks are like doing this offline and don't want to type in the chat. I just want to say before I forget that if you want to take your notes, take a picture, scan it, send me the document you've been typing in. Like I'm happy to have a little dialogue about what you have built as well. After the session, you'll have all my contact information. Okay, and let's see. And so Lola's given us some more additive information too about their work related to domestic violence in the community. So the change would be the chief of police working with our domestic violence program to schedule required training in working with domestic violence victims. When law enforcement receives training to become an officer, there's very little formal training on dealing with domestic violence situations. So that is a positive structural change that you're proposing that would make a bigger community benefit. Awesome. Okay, you're doing such a great job. Thank you, everybody, for being so participatory in the public chat. This has been really fun to see this built. We got to our fifth and final section. And we know that big picture, the red thread, like I joked that the action we want them to take is to fund the grant. But let's talk about your actions. What are the concrete steps that you as a team, you as a department, you as an organization, you as a tribal organization, what are the steps that you will take to bring about that change? I also understand how long that list might be. So why don't you just think about your top 2 or 3 if you want. And final exercise of the class, let's do 61 seconds this time. I know I could give you like an hour and 61 seconds thinking about all your key activities, but we'll just do a quick 61 seconds already on the clock, jotting some notes about your action. What are those concrete steps that you're going to take? And I'm going to get my delineator ready in the chat box. All right, you've got just under 20 seconds left. You can start typing in any of your notes about the action if you would like. And as you're typing in, I love, Angelina, yours went like for big change. Big change because you're talking about generational change. So some of what we've looked at is more short-term change. Some is intermediate time distance change. You went big long-term impact change. I love it. So it's some really wide range of examples, not just in topic area, but also in how you approached the change as a group. All great examples. So final notes in the public chat. Any thoughts about your actions? What do we have for actions? What are the things that you will do? Now, when it all comes together, this is your fifth and final step. You're going to find those same prompts in that red thread guide handout, the one that Brooke had shared the link to. When we think about how those all come together, I just want to be super clear, and I think you're probably seeing it in the way that we've been talking about these examples. This is not a theme. It is not a theme about children's safety. It is not only a theme about basic needs related to housing. It is not related to domestic violence as just a basic theme. The grant makers, like trying to get them to remember, this is the proposal that's about children's safety. Okay, no, this is the one that is going to reduce deaths in children in this community. That's a red thread versus a theme. And so if we want to get really specific about what the question is that a grant maker understands because of the 5 elements that you have just built today, why this project, by this organization, for this need at this time. I didn't ask you questions that are specifically about all the elements of this question, all the parts of this question. But our grant makers, we want them to understand and be able to say again, oh, this is the one that's about. And so this organization, you're going to teach them how awesome you are. You're going to talk about your capacity and other elements of your application. They're going to remember your name as an organization. So we don't really need to talk about that as a specific element of our 5 red thread pieces. The need for our project, what's the problem? What sort of change are we going to create, right? That's telling them why it's important. So I told you I was going to explain how our team actually edits for red thread. I showed you that super quick method for how we have tried playing with AI to see if it can grab out of a big chunk of text, can it grab and color code for us our 5 elements? Here's what the framework is, learning model, language learning model. Here is our text. Tell me if all 5 are present. And it could do that. And it could color code it. We're like, oh, that's kind of fun. But day to day, that is not what is within our team's AI use policy. And we have our copy editor who is there to help ensure that what we put forward is the strongest proposal possible. And so as we brainstormed for a team, we talked about what the red thread was. We looked at what we were trying to do. And Krista said, you know, I think I want to, after I read the proposal the first time, I always read it all the way through. I never make any changes on the first read. Before I start worrying about nuances on language and making suggested changes, I want to answer the red thread question. And I want to see, does it align with the writer's intent? And so that's exactly what she started to do. Proposal of any length, of any grant maker kind. She reads the proposal, and then she jots down the answers to this fill in the blank question, so that she's thinking about, why does this need to happen by this organization at this time? So you're going to find this in your download as well. So if you have someone who's helping to review your proposals on a regular basis, or maybe they occasionally get to help, you might want to suggest that in addition to reading for a comma here, a semicolon there, a passive sentence here, that they consider adding this to their review. And you can give them that exact sheet out of your download. So you can step back and ask yourself, are they all there? But you've written the whole thing of any size, and so you're super close to it, and it's hard to see, which is why having someone who can do the reading and assessment for you, is it there? Did I understand it? Is ideal. It's part of why we also played with that AI, because we get it. Not everyone has someone available to read. If you wanted to try asking it in a different way, you're like, I don't want to have to explain the red thread. I just kind of want to understand people's reaction to the proposal. Go outside of your organization. Go outside of your 4 walls, digital or physical, and ask people that you know that aren't going to be competing against you, that aren't going to take that information and, right, they're like, listen, I'll buy you a cup of coffee, or come on over for a dessert, and like, could you read this real quick? I want to know, once you read it, can you tell me what it's about? What is it that I was asking for money for? And see what someone who's totally brand new to your work, outside of your organizational walls, what did they think was your core message? That's another way, without teaching anyone anything about red thread, adding specific prompts, having someone totally disconnected from the organization, read it and tell you what they think the point of the proposal is. That's another great way to mimic the way your grant maker will react to the red thread. So what might make a red thread whoops in a proposal? Now, these are also just, they could be some general proposal mistakes, but these particular items make it really difficult for a red thread to be present, for the grant maker to have a phrase about your proposal that they're going to advocate for. So if we have different sections of our proposals, I get it, online proposals feel really chunky just by their design, but if they don't share elements that build on each other, so therefore they feel disjointed, they feel disconnected, that is not a nice, consistent red thread. It might feel like there's little snippets of thread, but it won't be one long, consistent thread. An absolute challenge to red thread is a lot of acronyms, a lot of industry or community jargon. Acronyms, did I mention? Acronyms are really, really difficult for reviewers. Yes, even if you define them the first time you use them in a proposal. Yes, even if you define them the first section in proposals every time you use it. It's jarring to reviewers, and it's harder for them to get in to the red thread. If you've got lots of priorities, you've got lots of goals, you're putting forward all the things, it's really difficult for the reviewers to find the start of the red thread. Remember, the red thread starts with a goal. If you're talking about all the goals of your organization, I know that many of you are within like multi-service organizations. So if you start by talking about all the things you do, it's overwhelming, and the red thread, where it actually starts as a path that they're going to follow through the proposal, is difficult. Now, kind of at the other end of the proposal, if your outcomes, what are the things that you would end up measuring that would talk about impact? If those feel like they're vague, it's not real clear what success might look like. Now I'm going to do like the thread sort of phrase at the end. It doesn't feel as clear, it starts to wash out a little bit. We didn't anywhere in our 5 elements of the framework, we never talked about specific SMART objectives, which you probably, you're like, whew, sigh of relief. You thought I was going to make you write SMART objectives today, didn't you? No, that wasn't the point of today, but SMART objectives within your grant proposal, they make the red thread stronger. It's sort of like a color additive. They make it stronger red throughout the entire proposal. If we have objectives that have all 5 elements, if we have objectives that are specific, are measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, what we have done is we have built our credibility with the grant maker. They now have more confidence in who we are, in what we can do, in what we will do. And I think it's probably because it is, again, it's my daughter's 20th birthday, so the car seat safety thing is just, it's going to stick with me all day. We'll probably talk about it with her on FaceTime tonight. Yep, probably. But so if walking through everything that Whitney has shared, if I'm super engaged and I've read about why it's a need, and I've read about some of the description and the high level goal stuff, and then if I start to read about some of the objectives for how the work's going to go in, and Whitney, I'm not saying you would ever do this, but I'm just saying, for example, if the objectives weren't time bound, wasn't sure in the 3-year proposal when some of the different actions were going to take place. It's not that I'm saying no right away to the proposal, but it makes it harder for me as a reviewer to feel confident in all the details because I have some unanswered questions. Something like, when is that car seat safety clinic going to take place? And when is that outreach campaign going to happen? I'm just making up activities. Sorry about that, Whitney. But it starts to make me question a few of the details when we have objectives that aren't fully SMART. I might still not debate the truth at all, but any question of doubt subconsciously like that for the reviewer makes it harder for the reviewer to speak up, to advocate in a very competitive process. So we don't want to give our reviewers, consciously or subconsciously, any reason to step away from our proposal, to get distracted from what the red thread is, from the truth. We are going to address this improvement in child safety in our community. We're going to do it through car seat safety education. Fewer children in our community will die. That's what we want their focus on. So SMART objectives, they're in the moment when they're done right, they're proof. They're more credibility for you as an organization. It reinforces that you can address that truth. If they're weak or they leave something out, our reviewers are less confident. Still might feel positive about the proposal, but remember, you're within a whole stack of proposals. So we want to be right at the tippy top in terms of who they're going to advocate for. This is one of my favorite reference slides as it relates to SMART objectives. So this one might be one out of the handout for all your slides that you might keep reference to. This is not specific to the red thread, but it's more to say so that your SMART objectives do not in any way weaken the strength of your red thread. These are questions that you can ask yourselves or ask your colleagues who are maybe going to implement the project or program. These are some interview questions you could use to get more details if you find that your objectives are not fully SMART. So what are some of the things we want to be careful about? Now, I told you when we were doing the goals, I said broad, ambiguous, like they're big. It's like a kind of a Goldilocks fairy tale type story, right? Like there can be too big and too broad. So you want to right size it. Something that is within your control really is one way to think about it. Something that is within your sphere of influence with the right amount of funding. Also, what would get us in trouble? Not having the time-bound, time-limited elements in our objectives, and certainly I did not pick on measurement, but the M in SMART objectives is the most commonly missed or weakest element of SMART objectives. So we want to definitely keep an eye out for that. By the time you're done with your SMART objectives within your proposal, you should go back and review all of them, whether you wrote 3, 5, doesn't matter how many. Ask yourself if you can check the box on these 5 items for each objective by itself. And remember, you should choose a checklist, but like you're still too close to it because you wrote it. So that person who might choose to fill out the prompt about the red thread framework, why blank, by blank, for blank, at blank, that one. You could also give this 5-item checklist to that same person and say, hey, I know I like more structured feedback requests here, but in addition to the commas you're watching for, or those passive sentences, and I know I gave you that red thread idea, but if you're willing to read the objective section with these checklist items in mind, I'll be frank, I actually prefer when I am giving feedback on something to have a really specific request of what will be most valuable to the person. Otherwise, I sometimes worry, like, is this the right kind of feedback that's going to be helpful for them? So to me, it's actually a gift when I'm being asked to give feedback if there's some nice structure that the person said will be the most valuable to them. So I encourage you to try. So you built your 5 elements. We've seen some of those elements being built live in the public chat. Talked about how SMART objectives really that they make it a stronger thread. Now I want you to step back. Whole application. Let's think about the whole thing. From the very beginning, whatever the very beginning is of the application, till the very end, whatever the very end is, your red thread is going to help the reviewer to understand what it is you're going to achieve and how it is that, that truth that they're not debating How is it you're going to create impact around that truth? What is it that you're going to do surrounding that thing that they are not debating? None of the truths in the public chat, none of them were being debated today. We all agreed. Yeah, no, we agree with you. We want to give you money, right? Was anybody else like, let's give everybody money? Yes, we want to fund something that's going to address that truth. So the alignment of your application, the consistency of how you tell your story, that is what's going to help stay focused for your reviewer, to go back to like the literal thread analogy, that idea that if you're very careful, it's a nice, they pick up the thread when they start reading the application, and they sort of wind their way through, or maybe they're unread, but they're following the thread. Whether you want to think about it as collecting and kind of balling it back up together so they end up with a ball of yarn, or if it's like they're following a thread and eventually they get to the end, either one works. But that's what helps to make it so that it is a pleasurable experience for the reviewer. They never feel like they're lost along the way. They feel like they're really confident in what you've put forward. They think that you're the best group to do this work. That's the sort of feeling that they walk away with. That it's easy for them to say, this one, we want to fund this one. Having your red thread framework, 5 elements that are present. They're not going to be specific headings in all grant maker proposals. Sometimes you might, let's say you wrote a letter of request. There's no headings. You still have all 5 red thread elements present, with the addition of SMART objectives. Because funders, that's language, that's funder language, right? They're like, write your objectives in SMART format. And if they don't say it, I didn't mean to sound kind of like sarcastic in that one. If they don't say it, they're thinking it. Funders expect SMART objectives. So if you take the red thread concept of how you want to convince your grant makers to take action, which is funding you, and you give them the thread elements plus, yeah, those great SMART objectives, you have a story that no one is going to debate. No one's going to walk away from. They're going to fund you. Okay, well, you're right. There's more in the funding process that we sometimes just don't control. It could happen that you write an application that takes all the red thread elements and your SMART objectives. Maggie Perry from our team, who's taught sometimes with us here at Native Learning Center, would be so proud. I know you're going to write these beautiful SMART objectives, and you still might not get the grant. It could happen. It could. It's happened to us. And it's because there's other things that were at work in the process, right? Somebody had a relationship, there were priority points in the process. There are other things that even if you do it just exactly as I have described it, I can't guarantee that it will work every time, but boy, does it work a lot of the time. And a lot is that's going to translate into a pretty good award percentage. Let's be frank, that's what that happens. So as you're writing your proposals, as you're thinking about the deadlines that you have coming up, all the sections, every section, even your budget. I know we didn't talk about budget. We're not going to get deep into it, but even the budget portion of your application is part of building on that overall red thread, plus SMART objectives equals cohesive story picture. Because your budget helps to say, hey, I have the resources to achieve these objectives, which means, hey, I have the resources to help address this truth statement that none of us are debating. Your application and the consistency of your message, you want to be thinking like a grant maker. You want to be asking your grant reviewer, your internal copy editor, your friend who for that cup of coffee will read the whole proposal, whoever it is. You want them thinking like they're in the seat of, in the shoes of, that they are a grant maker. You want them pointing out. You don't even have to give them the checklist. Ask them. How does it feel? Does it feel aligned? What is your answer to why blank, by blank, for blank, at this time blank? Would you use AI like I showed you? You could. But again, Please ensure that it is within your tribal organization's AI usage policy. Okay, I know, I said it before, but I had to put it there as well. So I did want to point out that in addition to wherever you can find Tamsin Webster on social media, if you choose to read the book Red Thread or listen to the book if you prefer, the Message Design Institute is another great resource. That's Tamsin's work, and so is a great spot where you're going to find more about this story-driven framework. It's going to be broad. It's not going to be just about grants, but honestly, I think that sometimes being broader outside of grants is a great way to learn more about the concept. Now, you've been amazing, amazing in the chat box today for how much you've interacted and how much you've shared. I'm going to keep an eye on it. I scrolled up a moment ago and I didn't see any questions that I hadn't addressed, but if you have a question on the topic that you'd like to get answered, please go ahead and share that in the public chat now. You can also always email me after. Happy to answer anything after the fact. It's Diane@dhleonardconsulting.com. And real quick, and then it's going to be back to Brooke asking for your feedback survey. But I did want to flag, if it's not already on your calendar, I know that Brooke's team was going to help make sure that folks learn about this, but March 6th is around the corner. Our free annual Learn Grants Summit is coming up, and we hope that you will come celebrate with all sorts of grant pros from all around the world. 6 different speakers, totally free, 10-minute presentations by each. We'd love to see you. It's March 6th. But back to you, Brooke, because I know how much we value everybody's feedback about our sessions. So I'm going to turn it to you.
Yay! Thank you so much for another wonderful webinar, Diane. I think all of you can see why we call her the goddess of grants here at the Native Learning Center. I saw a lot of love in the chat, and if y'all wouldn't mind showing her some love in the webinar feedback survey. I have put the link for you in the chat. It takes about 2 to 3 minutes. It's anonymous. You don't have to worry about your email or your name being connected to it. It just lets us at the Native Learning Center know what is working well, what we can improve upon for the future. So it helps us, it helps you, our webinar attendees, and we do share the feedback with our instructors. So it helps everybody involved. I hope you can take a minute or 3 to do that for us. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. That is going to be next week on Tuesday. This one will be on creating a positive work environment with Dr. William R. Latchford, who has a doctorate in criminal justice. He's the president of Native Peacekeeper Consulting Group. He's been doing his leadership series this whole quarter. So if you've been tuning into any of his other webinars, this one is going to be another great one. It's going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, or 10 a.m. Alaska, depending on which time zone you reside in. You'll be able to check out this as well as our other recorded webinars on our YouTube channel. There is a whole playlist called Cathedra Webinar Archive. I encourage you to go through and check out all the different recordings that we have, share them with your friends, share them with your colleagues. If you ever find that you need to find a specific topic, I am always helpful to kind of put together a playlist for you. Just shoot me an email. I put my email in the chat. Or if it's something that we haven't touched on yet, then I can kind of file that information away for topics we can try to attain in the future. We hope you can check out our other upcoming training events. We post about them all the time. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you are someone who likes to listen to podcasts, we have our own in-house produced podcast, the Hope a Thing, a Native American podcast. You can listen to that wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we also post the video recordings with our special guests to our YouTube channel as well. But otherwise, that is all we have for you today, folks. I hope everybody has a wonderful Valentine's Day this weekend, a wonderful weekend in general. It is a holiday weekend for a lot of us, so I hope you enjoy the extra time with your family, with your friends, with your pets, if you're like me. But otherwise, thank you everybody so much. Thank you again, Diane. We'll talk soon, and I hope everybody has a good one. I'm going to put that webinar feedback survey link at the bottom of the chat just so it's right there for you. And I am going to turn off the recording, but I will keep the webinar room open so that you have access to all those great links there in the shared notes. Have a great rest of your day and weekend, everybody. Thanks so much.